Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing Apple Pie's 96's Mono Red Prison deck. Mono Red Prison is an archetype that aims to stop your opponent from being able to play the game via effects like Blood Moon, which we also have Magus of the Moon to do the same, Trinisphere, and Chalice of the Void. Once we suppress our opponent in one of these ways, we tend to play out a threat that snowballs quite quickly, something like a Goblin Rabblemaster. Broadside Bombardiers can really do a lot of damage when we're drawing like excess Trinispheres that we can throw or excess Blood Moons, that sort of jam. We also have a Squee, which can kind of do things a little bit similar to a Goblin Rabblemaster, not quite as good. But what we can do with Squee is we can sack it to the Broadside Bombardiers and then bring it back. So this could be like recursive food for our Bombardiers. We've got a bunch of fast mana to make this happen. So we've got 8 soul lands and we've got a bunch of fast mana in the form of Chrome Moxes and Spirit Guides as well. So we can power out these things. So sometimes we'll just be powering out a turn 1 threat and beating down. If anything does slip through the cracks, we've got some ways of addressing that. So we have 4 Furies in the main deck, which is just a very good threat to have. It can blow up annoying creatures that come down and mess with us. We can also evoke this in our second main phase and then sacrifice it to the Broadside Bombardiers to throw 7 damage at something, as well as the 4 damage it will do to creatures or planeswalkers. So that's pretty good. We've got some unlicensed hearses here, which are things that get crewed by all the creatures in our deck, whether it's Bombardiers, Magus, Fable tokens, Rabblemaster itself, Squee, that sort of thing. Obviously our 1/1 tokens won't crew it, we can use 2 of them. So that's kind of another angle, so we can kind of prison out graveyard strategies as well. Hidden in the mana base, we have 4 Den of the Bugbear, which is quite unusual to see. Obviously I'm no expert in Mono Red Prison, but it does seem like quite a lot, and we only have 3 mountains. And we have a Sokenzan as well, which is something that if we are under a Blood Moon, this in our hand can still be creatures, so it's a bit flexible. And it comes in untapped, so I'm a big fan of that one. So yeah, that's the deck list. Let's make our opponents have a bad time, and then we'll have a good time. Sideboard-wise, we've got some things that you'd expect and some that you might not. So Graveyard Hate in the form of Leyline the Void, that's not really a surprise. Another Blood Moon effect. When they're good, we want more of them. Makes sense. Fiery Confluence. This is our best artifact hate because we have our own artifacts we don't want to blow up. So we want to smash our opponent's things. This can also deal with creatures. It can do the last points of damage. It can swing a race. It's pretty useful. Null Rod. Yes, we do have Chrome Moxes, but sometimes shutting down your opponent's artifacts will be way better. So we have these for that. We have 1 Chaos Adventurer for any matchup where our threats might not stay on the board for very long. So we want to be getting the recurring advantage of the initiative going through. So like control-y style matchups. We have 3 Dead and Gone. This is a little bit more creature removal that can deal with a big creature that we can hopefully stop coming back down with one of our prison effects. Also gets rid of Marit Lage tokens. Then we have an Emrakul, the Aeons Torn. This is just for Painter. So against Painter, they can't mill us out while this is in our deck. So they need to have the 3rd card in the form of Soul Guide Lantern to stop that. So it's 1 card, but it's always going to come up in that matchup. Whenever you brought it in, it should be useful unless we draw it. So yeah. That's the deck. I'm normally on the other side of Blood Moons, as you probably know. So this time we're going to jam some Blood Moons of our very own and see how they feel. Alright, this is Apple Pie's 96's Legacy Challenge winning deck list. Remember to like and subscribe. Really helps the channel out. And let's jam some Prison. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? We are on the play for game 1. What is our choice here? This hand is a keeper for sure. We can lead out with a Chalice of the Void for 1. That's pretty good. We can do a Chalice of the Void for 0 as well if we feel the need. We are going to keep this hand. So we begin with the classic Chalice of the Void on 1. Let's see how good this is in this matchup. I don't think we want to put either of these underneath our Chrome Mox. The question we have here is, do we want to play a Chalice for 0? This will hurt our own Chrome Mox in our hand. If we lose our Ancient Tomb and it gets wastelanded, we're going to feel bad that we don't have a Chrome Mox we can rely on. So I'm not going to play the Chalice of the Void here. Let's see what sort of deck our opponent is on. So this could be some sort of Delver archetype. That would be my guess here. So now we have to worry about, are we playing around Daze here or not? So which of these is the bigger prize is the question. So the recurring removal or the threat that snowballs out of control. I think whichever one of these we play, it's probably not going to have a great time in the face of a potential Daze over there. But if our opponent's dazing, they're not doing anything else. The Bombardiers is going to be very good with all these excess chalices and stuff we have. So I think we play out the Rabblemaster first. They didn't force the chalice, so I don't believe they have a force, but they might have a daze. They're floating a blue here, and they're dazing. Sure, we cannot pay. But if they manage to find any threats they put into play, we can always Bombardiers them. Bombardiers doesn't get roadblocked by Murktide Regent because of the menace on it, and we can just throw things like Chalice and Chrome Mox upstairs. Wasteland would be a thing we don't want to see here. Alright, they're playing the Volcanic again, and nothing else. A Fury. Is it worth imprinting this Fury to make sure our Broadside Bombardiers resolves through something like a daze? I honestly think that's probably worth doing. Like with Chalice in play, we're probably not worried about the 1-drops that we can kill with Fury anyway. Let's play this Broadside Bombardiers. Alright, they're conceding there because you played a threat that they can't deal with. Alright, I believe our opponent's playing Delver. So what are the things we want for Delver? Magus of the Moon is kind of interesting here. Dead and Gone is good for picking off their little guys early on, but we are very much wanting to play a Chalice-based game here. It does feel a lot like our deck is kind of pre-kitted out to beat Delver, really. Like Trinisphere is pretty annoying for them. Unlicensed Hearse keeps down their scariest things. Fury can pick up most of their creatures outside of the Murktide, which we're hoping to stop via things like Trinisphere. The one thing, maybe we do want some amount of Dead and Gone just to deal with our opponent's Murktide. Being able to bounce that could be quite useful. However, what are we supposed to cut? Because like, our things are pretty good. I guess Magus of the Moon is not so good here. Like giving them all red mana when they're just going to have lightning bolts and things. I think it's probably better to have a Dead Gone over that. And then maybe Squee is probably the weakest of our threats, so we can trim that for another Dead Gone. This is just so we don't get blown out by a Murktide, because that's probably how we lose this game, is if our opponent sticks an early enough Murktide, because that can race what we're doing. So what does this hand do? We have an unlicensed Hearse, which stops the Murktide, which is one of the problems we identified. We have a Fury, which can keep other creatures down. This seems fine. I would like to draw a red source. We do have these Chrome Moxes, but they're obviously not free. Okay, so we are playing a Grixis build. So this could be a Stalactite Stalker list. It could be just Bowmasters and sideboard cards. It's hard to say. Another Broadside Bombardiers. Alright, I think we play out this Ancient Tomb. And we play out this Chrome Mox because we want to play this Unlicensed Hearse around a daze. If our opponent wants to spend 2 cards, that's fine. I think we put the Dead Gone underneath. Let's get Hearse ticking away. And then we can use this to stop Dragon's Rage Channeler from ever attacking for a decent amount. And we can also stop Murktide Regent from ever coming into play. And then one of our red creatures should be enough to win the game. So play things like Delver or Stalactite Stalker, we can eat them up with a Fury. Or with Broadside Bombardiers, you can throw stuff. Our situation seems fine, but things can definitely go wrong for us. Meltdown is something that they can have, which can destroy effectively 3 of our cards for 1. Right, there's a Ponder from our opponent. Right, they've cracked after the Ponder. And there's a Delver of Secrets. Our opponent's end step, we will remove the instants and sorceries, I think. Well, 2 sorceries. But these are the things that fuel a Murktide, so if we lose our Unlicensed Hearse, that means at least we're going to have smaller sized Murktides down the line. A Rabblemaster. That's quite a nice one. I do like this Broadside Bombardiers as well, though. Are we trying to play around days again? That does play more into a Meltdown. But we kind of need to get one of our things down. But if we're trying to do the Fury, I guess we can draw a land next turn if we put this Chrome Mox to cast a Rabblemaster here. Alright, let's try this. We could crew the Hearse and attack, just to force a little bit more damage. I think it's going to be better to use this to strip cards out of our opponent's graveyard. Our opponent's thinking on this one for a while. I think we imprint the Rabblemaster, and we play Rabblemaster. So we can ignore a daze. Our opponent hasn't had an opportunity to brainstorm, so they can't fix their hand. So if they had a daze before, it's not... And they know that we're playing around daze, it's not something that they can deal with. And just trade it in for something more useful. There's no lightning bolt here, so we're going to get some value off of this. We could have gone and got the Broadside into play and then fired off a Chrome Mox. But the Rabblemaster scales up nicely. If we're going to lose all of our Chrome Moxes next turn, having a Rabblemaster in play is better than having just a Broadside with no permanence. There is a Wasteland. Okay. We're going to see Meltdown and Wasteland here. Right, so there's the lightning bolts. Sure. There's the Wasteland. This didn't flip this turn. So let's just get rid of this Lightning Bolt and this Wasteland. So the Unlicensed Hearse being a 4/4 means it's going to be much harder for them to kill. A Shatterskull Smashing. Yes, I'll pay 3 life. Let's see if this gets dazed. I don't really think we have the opportunity to play around it just now. Alright, it's a Force of Will anyway. That's fine. So we're going to need to find a little bit more action here. So presumably this Force of Will was in their hand along with this Brainstorm. They didn't think anything we played before was worth it because they didn't flip it to the Delver. That is interesting. Delver not flipping this turn either. There is a Wasteland. Yikes. That's pretty good. A red and a black. Does Molten Collapse? I believe it is. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, our opponent is the one putting us in prison right now. They didn't attack with their Delver Secrets, which I think was just a misclick. Let's get rid of Force of Will and Molten Collapse. Simian Spirit Guide. So we can kill this and then bash for a bunch with our hearse. If we want to. But we only get to attack once with the hearse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that enough? I don't think we have to this turn. I think we hit one more turn. And then we can do that. Because we can get our hearse to grow a little bit bigger. And do half of our opponent's life total. And we just need to find one more thing to crew it at some point. Still not flipping the Delver. Interesting. Dragon's Race Channeler. This makes our Fury way better. Opponent's got 1 card in hand, so they can't Force of Will this. They can just daze. These 2 cards. What are we going to find? An Ancient Tomb. That's certainly going to be useful later on. So I think step 1 here is exile this. So we put the vote trigger on the bottom. And we do 3 to this one and 1 to this one. And then we crew this, tapping our Fury. And we kill both their guys and bash them for half their life total. And next turn, all we have to do is find one of our many 3-drops and we can play this Ancient Tomb and make our guy. We're not going to play this Ancient Tomb out now because that means Wasteland can stop that line. Alright. I can't Murktide yet. Another DRC. Sure. So, a 3-drop creature will force us into chump block mode. That's not a thing we get to do here. Alright. I think we just pass here. We find another red card, we can evoke a Fury, do the same play. Our hearse gets to be bigger each time as well, because we're not attacking, so we're stripping their graveyard. Alright, this next Fury is looking even tastier. In for 1, sure. And I imagine that 1 card they have in hand is probably the same one they had before, which didn't impact our last Fury. This Unlicensed Hearse doing real work here. A red card should be game. Let's see if we find it. We did not find a red card. Interesting. We don't really have 4-drops. So playing one of these out doesn't really make the most sense. I think we should still play this out. If our opponent Wastelands, that's something else we get to eat with a hearse. Not that it really matters at this point. We're just trying to draw a red card before our opponent draws Force of Will. Red, is this going to be a Lightning Bolt to our face? A Meltdown, where X is just 1. Oh, sorry, X is 0. It's just hitting our Chrome Mox. That's fine. They milled a Force of Will. That means the card in their hand is not a blue one. I would imagine that's what that means. Right, there's 3 different types in there. We don't need to crack this now. Just take our 2. So if we crack this and they somehow have another spell, then they can suddenly get Delirium again. Opponent's got 1 card in hand. Right, we'll get rid of the ones that pump Murktide. Can we draw a red card? We can draw a red card. We'll play this just in case we need some extra mana for some reason. What is this? Hydroblast? It is a Hydroblast. Okay, that's a good one. That's a very good one. I think our opponent might have this game now. We've got 4-turn clock. We don't have any red mana. They're just going to be milling as much as they can here. Alright, so they got Sorcery, Instant, and Artifact. So we're going to take 2 this turn. Again, it's the same as last time. We want to wait till later because this won't shrink their size. We just want to hold it just in case they do something with 4 damage. Right, we'll take the 2 sorceries out. They're the harder card types for Delver to put into their graveyard, generally speaking. Alright. A Chrome Mox. That doesn't help us here. It can give us red mana to cast a red guy down the line, but I think our opponent's just going to slowly beat us down and kill us here. Line of up to the face, maybe not so slowly. I'm not sure we can win this game now. They put one card on top of their library. If that's a lightning bolt, we're definitely dead. Brainstorm. Okay. So they got instant, artifact, and nothing else just yet. Sorcery. So still only 1/1s. So we're not dead right now, but I'm not sure what another draw step actually does for us. Another lightning bolt. Sure, we're just going to see what they surveil in case we see any sideboard cards. I imagine they won't. Okay, they are putting stuff in still. Sure. Alright, we didn't see any information. Let's go to game 3. I don't think we want to change anything for game 3. I think what we had was fine there. We were just very unfortunate not to turn the corner at the very end there. Yep, I think we just go back in. I suppose the other option we could have had was to play the Simian Spirit Guide as a 2/2 to activate our thing. No, we couldn't have done that because we just had our stuff meltdown, didn't we? Yeah, so we didn't really have any other agency, which is often how Mono Red Prison goes. You have your opening hand, which is a decision you get to make, and then you have your sequencing of your first few turns, and then after that you're kind of just living on agency apart from if you've got living without agency apart from Fable, if you've got that and you can loot with it. Let's have a look. Turn 1 Trinisphere, we get wastelanded, we lose that game. So that's not really good enough. Ancient Tomb, Unlicensed Hearse, I'm a fan of that. We can keep this. And what are we throwing back here? Do I want to keep this Chrome Mox so we can accelerate out? I don't think we need to be honest. I think we can just run it in like this and just have a selection of lands. So we can start off on the Hearse and then deploy the Rabblemaster. Our opponent's mulligan to 5, so that's relatively helpful for us. Now, if they Force of Will our Unlicensed Hearse, that's them down to 3 cards to begin with. And then a Rabblemaster needs an immediate answer, otherwise in like a couple of turns it basically wins the game. Let's get the Hearse down. Alright, we have the car. We are ready to start zooming around in our automobile. A Volcanic Island from our opponent into a Brainstorm. Sure, that's something we get to gobble up this turn with the Hearse. We'll wait and see if they play something like a Bauble so we can get 2 gobbles up with our Hearse. That turn 1 Brainstorm is very interesting to me. And we have another Rabblemaster, which is something I'm excited to see here. Alright, we're seeing a Force of Will on this Rabblemaster. Pitching a Murktide Regent. Next turn we get to make the same play. Our opponent does have a choice. If they have a Wasteland, they can maybe take us off of a 3-drop next turn. Or they can try and take us off of red mana. Alright, no Wasteland. Blue and blue. A Null Rod. Sure, we will take out this Force of Will from their graveyard. So at least we get to bash for 2 this turn. Another reason why not keeping the Chrome Mox is going to work out for us. Oh wait, this is a Crew, right? Crew is an activated ability, if I recall correctly. Let's play this, and we'll pay some life. Wait, why are we paying life for that? That was... Oh, so we can pay around days. Okay, yeah. We're not allowed to crew this because it is an activated ability. Because of course it is. Yeah, so it costs us 3 life to pay around days then. So we're trying to avoid something like a lightning bolt on our guy into a threat of theirs. Could be kind of annoying. Doesn't leave us with a great deal. Alright, that's a land. There's a lightning bolt. But our deck is full of like good 3-drops here. So we can certainly draw something. Okay, and there's a threat. We can remove this with our Shatterskull Smashing. And our opponent has no cards in hand. A Blood Moon. How useful is this Blood Moon? I think this is an interesting choice. So we can Blood Moon now. And then Shatterskull Smashing the turn after. I think that's acceptable. Alternatively, do we want to start attacking with Den of the Bugbear? This is a 3-2. So if we play the Blood Moon, we do lose our best threat that we have in play right now. That's interesting. I think we're supposed to Shatterskull Smashing. Oh my god. Have I clicked the wrong thing? I have clicked the wrong thing. I clicked the play as a land rather than cast mode. That might cost us the game. Right, that's an awkward one for sure. Do they have a basic they can fetch with their Misty Rainforest? The answer is no. So now we are trying to top deck a threat before our opponent kills us with their Delver of Secrets. Oh, that was a misclick and a half, wasn't it? They did not flip their Delver. So if it's a Dragon's Race Channeler, they can play it. If there's a Lightning Bolt, they can play it. Otherwise, they probably can't do anything with it. Our opponent is winning this race handily. But we get to cast a Simian Spirit Guide. Boom. The race is ours. Unless it's Delver flips, then we're in trouble. A meltdown. Like, we don't really care if the Hearst dies at this point. It's not doing anything. They'll also lose their Null Rod, which could get them towards Delirium for the future. We're just more worried about this Delver flipping, because we are not beating that. Now, if we draw like a Fury or something, another Blood Moon. That's not really the one, is it? So attacks. Yeah, we're going to lose for the misclick on Shatterskull Smashing here. Do you want a second Blood Moon? How useful is that? How useful is a second Blood Moon? I don't think it's that useful. I think we pass here. We want to draw Broadside Bombardiers, Dead Gone, or Fury. So that's like 8, 9, 10. Did we board in all of the Dead Gones? That's 11 cards maybe. But then we're also just dead to Lightning Bolt at any time. Do we find it? A Fury. We did find the Fury. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They don't have any islands, so they can't... Right, let's just... They can't daze us. Let's see if this works. And we're still dead to Lightning Bolt. But we hit for 3 this turn, and we hit for 6, 7, 8, 9 next turn, so we're not quite lethal. So our opponent's got 3 draw steps, I think. They can't dig for anything because they can't cast cantrips. Dragon's Rage Channeler is a long way off of being Delirious. Chalice of the Void. This is an excellent draw. Let's shut off Lightning Bolt. We need to have a meltdown in hand, though. So maybe not that excellent. Opponent goes to 1. So they have to draw Lightning Bolt this turn. They can meltdown and Lightning Bolt still. If they meltdown for 2, then Lightning Bolt. Oh, they got us here. Are we going to be punished for our misclick? Certainly possible. Bolt. Our opponent said Bolt in chat, but they haven't cast it. They said GG. I don't know whose GG is. Are they still rolling me? Alright. Yeah, so this was only a game because we misclicked with our Shatterskull Smashing. If we hadn't have misclicked with that, we handily win this one. So the deck at least got the result it should have. Maybe we deserve to lose the misclick, although it was a misclick rather than a misplay. So I rolled low on dexterity, as it turns out. Okay, let's go to round 2. We are 1-0. Alright, this hand for round 2 seems pretty decent. We can go turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Fable, or Blood Moon, depending on what we think is useful. That seems acceptable. And we also have a threat in the form of Fable the Mirrorbreaker, which also finds us other threats. So, I'm down for this one. Underground Sea into Ponder. My combo sense is tingling, but it's hard to say from this early on. Lots of decks run Underground Sea. Could be Doomsday, could be like a Delver deck. Either way, Chalice of the Void looks good here. And hopefully we'll get a better idea of what our follow-up play should be, depending on what happens here. So, they were thinking about a Force of Will, but they went against it in the end. That's interesting. So they definitely have a Force of Will in hand. So what am I supposed to think about that? Polluted Delta. Interesting. So we know they have a Force of Will in hand. So what am I wanting to do here? I am getting combo vibes from our opponent. So we have 2 choices. Do we offer up the Rabblemaster as a thing that they can... I think we save the Blood Moon for another turn. We try and get a counterspell on something like a Fable here. This is worth counterspelling, I think. We know they have a Force of Will because they started paying for one in the previous turn. So if our opponent's something like Doomsday, then the Blood Moon can really disrupt them, but we kind of need to get through this counterspell that our opponent's got. Alright, they didn't think the Fable was enough to counterspell. That's interesting. Alright, so they're going to cast Doomsday here, I think. Because the Doomsday deck can win without using 1-drops. Yeah. But now our Blood Moon isn't going to resolve because they were pretty disciplined with their counterspell there. So we're going to have to discard some cards with our Fable and find something here that's going to allow us to deploy multiple... I guess threats probably isn't good enough. Maybe we need Blood Moon and something else. We shall see. Alright, let's have a look at their exile zones, see what sort of build they're on. This personal tutors and stuff. This looks like pretty standard turbo. Just black, blue. There's no One Ring in there. Alright. And they are passing the turn. So they're on 9 here. Maybe the Rabblemaster would have been a safer bet there. We may discard up to 2 cards. Alright, we do want to discard up to 2 cards. So I think we are discarding this and the Fury. Neither of these really help us out here. I don't really think the Unlicensed Hearst helps us out, and Fury can go under Chrome Mox. So that's probably where I'm at here. 2 more Furies. Chalice of the Void isn't going to work. Okay, they don't have a Cavern of Souls in their pile. That's interesting. Alright, so we got attacks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 1 more mana, ideally, here. So if we play City of Traitors as our land drop. If we play Blood Moon, this probably gets a counter spell. And maybe that will take the blue card out of their hand. And then the Chalice of the Void can stop the Oracle because they already have the Cavern in exile. Let's see if this works. So hopefully this will stop our opponent going through their pile. So what do they pitch to this? A Brainstorm. Okay, yeah. That's not really helping under the Chalice anyway. I guess we cast this. It looks a bit weird, second main phase, but it's lethal next turn anyway. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage next turn. So casting it first or second main phase doesn't really matter. Our opponent's not going to counterspell that. So they should just be able to cycle through here. It's pay 2 life. They'll tap some mana. They'll sack some guys, sack some lands to Edge of Autumn. So that extra 1 damage we could have got with the Rabblemaster isn't really going to matter here. If we'd have played out the Rabblemaster first, we'd have actually been alright here as our threat, because that probably gets them the Force of Will. So I think we didn't sequence properly and we could have won that game. So yeah, I think we lost that one. So what is going to be useful in a matchup like this? Magus of the Moon feels like a good one. Fiery Confluence feels like if our opponent ever casts Doomsday, this can just like ruin their day. So that seems nice. Trinisphere is useful. Unlicensed Hearse can get out. That's not really what we're looking for in this matchup. That gives us 1 more cut. These Furies seem pretty rubbish. Do you want something like a Caves of Chaos Adventurer? If we can ram that out super early, it does just win the game. It's probably going to be better than having a Fury here. And I don't really think any of the other things do anything. Like Dead and Gone, maybe we can bounce their guy in response if they have a weird pile. But I honestly don't think that's a great way of approaching this matchup. So I think we're just going to go in like this. Alright. They're going to need a Force of Will on the play a lot of the time for what we're up to. Is Magus of the Moon or Chalice of the Void on 1 better? We're keeping this hand regardless. Let's play a Chrome Mox. Let's imprint Shatterskull Smashing, I think. Let's play an Ancient Tomb. So our choice is, do we want this Magus on turn 1? This does require an immediate Force of Will or Lights Out. And we'll try this. Okay, they're cycling their Street Wraith. That might be to get more choice of which cards they pitch, or it might be they don't have a Force. Doesn't look like they had a Force. If that was a Blood Moon, I would probably be more inclined to play the Chalice, because Blood Moon can get hit by Force of Negation, whereas Magus can't. Alright, I think I'm better off playing this rather than the Chalice, given our opponent's mana situation. Okay, so they had a Force of Negation, sure. If our opponent shows us, like, Lorien Revealed, then we'll jam this Chalice of the Void, because then they're going to be able to have mana to cast the spells. Right, we'll play this one because it's the quicker clock. We just want to get this game over and done with. If our opponent's life total gets so low, they can only do lines that pass the turn, and then they're going to get absolutely ruined. So they've got 2 significant problems here. The inability to cast spells and our massive selection of boys. Let's go attacks. Make a guy. Let's bash away. So there's a lethal next turn anyway, so I think we're in the market for playing a Chalice of the Void on 1. We'll pass. Alright, not sure what our opponent can have from this stage. Right, nothing, good. So I think we did mess up the first game by not playing things in the right sequence. So our opponent can certainly just bop us on turn 1 and punish us for that. Alright. Interesting, we can keep this, I suppose. We can do turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Magus. See what our opponent's up to here. No play on turn 1, interesting. Okay, so we'll play out our basic, play out our Chrome Mox. This will imprint a Fury. That's the least useful card of all of these. We've only got them in because they are a threat at the end of the day and can do some stuff. Let's cast this. Is this good enough for counter magic from your opponent? Alright, so this shuts off Personal Tutor, it shuts off Dark Ritual. But that doesn't stop our opponent from being able to just play like Lotus Petal and then cast the Doomsday that way. So their hand might have been one that could just ignore Chalice like in game 1. There's Underground Sea. Are we supposed to Magus of the Moon here, are we supposed to test them with the Rabblemaster? Or we can test them with a Trinisphere. Trinisphere is easy to make sure that everything else resolves, which is kind of nice. We can play around a daze here. Do you want this Trinisphere? Or do you want the Rabblemaster? I think I want the Trinisphere. So this is my experience with the deck coming up a little bit. Maybe we're supposed to get the threat down here. But if we play a Trinisphere, our opponent cannot kill us on the next turn cycle. And then if they cast a Doomsday, they are unlikely to be able to deal with our Magus of the Moon because they can't counterspell underneath the Trinisphere. So the real prize is the Magus. But Trinisphere secures the Magus either way, because it'll either eat a counterspell here. Well, it might not secure it. It might just make it slightly more likely to resolve. But either way, it's going to make the Magus of the Moon be more likely to have an impact. And this should guarantee us not dying next turn. Force of Will, pitching Hercule's Recall. Alright. That suggests to me that my opponent doesn't have another land. Because maybe you just wait in Hercule's Recall when you're ready to go off. Okay, I do have a land. Maybe I'm wrong. It's going to be Personal Tutor. A Doomsday. Okay, so now we need to deploy the Magus of the Moon and hope that it sticks. We can play it around a daze. If they use Force of Will on that and not Force of Negation, then it's less likely they have another Force of Will in hand. Because if they have a Force of Negation, Force of Will, you're always using the negation on the Trinisphere. I don't believe our opponent wins this turn, but I could be mistaken. They could have like a cantrip and a Lion's Eye Diamond in hand, and that would be enough to win. Like a free cantrip, like the one that blows up your own land, or the Street Wraith. Edge of Autumn. That's the one that you sack a land for. There is a Lion's Eye Diamond in the exile pile. They've also shown us they've got Murktide Regents as well. They can build a pile that beats Blood Moon, perhaps. So Chalice of the Void would be a good draw here, because that makes it so that if our Magus of the Moon sticks, they can't play any Lotus Petals. We've got one Lotus Petal here, 1, 2. Wow, we did actually draw the Lotus Petal here. Interesting. Alright. Let's go for Magus time. There's only 2 Lotus Petals here, so they might have 2 more ready to roll. It should shut our opponent off of being able to play... Yeah, okay. So like we said, they built a pile with 2 Lotus Petals in, so they could eventually cast their guy around a Blood Moon. But by us having Blood Moon and Chalice, that shuts it off. We were very fortunate to draw that Chalice of the Void. But if our opponent's got a Lotus Petal pile, they might struggle to go off on the next turn, so they might need another turn, which means we play the Rabblemaster instead and they still die. So our opponent was in a bit of a spot there, but we got them. Alright, we are 2-0. I think we had a little bit of missequencing in one of these games, but we learnt from it, so let's go to round 3. Alright, our opener here makes turn 1 Chalice into turn 2 Rabblemaster. This is fine by me. You want to keep hands that actually make threats. Prison Pieces don't lock out games like they used to. They disrupt. Alright. An Urza's Saga. This means we're probably playing this Chalice for 0 after we played our Chrome Mox. There's a Bauble. What flavour of Saga deck are we looking at here? Another Bauble. Alright, so they're cracking both their Baubles. Could be 8 cast, could be like Paradoxical Outcome style decks, but feels more 8 casted. That's the vibes I'm getting. Right, I will play out a Chrome Mox. I will imprint Shatterskull Smashing. I'll play out a Chalice for 0. Is it worth playing out a Chalice for 1? I'm not really convinced it is. Play out Den of the Bugbear. I think we probably still play the Chalice for 1. Like, if our opponent is on, like, a Saga Storm deck list, then the Chalice for 1 will actually do something against things like Dark Rituals and, like, Hand Disruption. Ancient Tomb, so we're just going to see some Urza Saga nonsense. That's fine. Our opponent can make a 1-1 in the face of our Blood Moon. We didn't have any counter spells last turn. Do they have any this turn? They're going to make a guy. This suggests to me they don't have counter spells, because otherwise you just counter it and make it end of turn. Alright. So they've got a 1-1. A lot of their permanents don't do anything. They can't play any 0 drops. Most of their lands don't do anything. Or they tap for colourless. Painted Servant. Okay, we're Painter. Alright. That changes things slightly. The Chalice of the Void on 1 is helpful now. Good to know. Is this Blue Painter? The Baubles makes me think it's Blue Painter rather than Red, because that's normally not something you would see in Red Painter. But the painted community are big innovators, so you never know. A Broadside Bombardiers. I don't really want to sacrifice any of the things I've got right now. A Rabblemaster isn't the most exciting though, because the 1/1's just going to run into this. Next turn we get to throw the 1/1 at like something. To play the Bombardiers. Tough call which of these is better. Either way we're playing it second main. I don't think we're playing the Bombardiers here. I think it's either the Fable or the Rabblemaster. I like the Fable here, I think. Get us towards something like a Fury, just get this painter off the board. Because if we clear what our opponent's got on the board right now, then they're basically cooked. We can Broadside Bombardiers and try and throw some stuff around. Ottawara, yeah, blue painter. More or less confirmed at this point. Another painter. This is going to name black as well. Interesting why they're naming black. Obviously not a snuff out deck. But now they have a 3/3 guy. And a 1/3. Why attacking with this? They're testing us here. Sure. They're just testing us. Fair enough. Another Fable. I don't really want this Fable, I don't think. Let's loot away. Probably just the Fable, I think. Trinisphere. That's not really where I want to be. What do we feel comfortable throwing at stuff? I guess next turn we can start copying stuff with Fable and then throwing the copied stuff. That's pretty tasty. Right, let's just make a Rabblemaster. We've got a life total that we can use as a resource. Next turn we can just start throwing stuff at our opponent's creatures and put this one to bed, I think. Next turn we can attack with... We can copy our Rabblemasters, attack with Bombardiers, and then throw the redundant Rabblemaster at one of their guys before it dies at end of turn. Or even at them, depending on how the life totals are looking at that point. We're attacking with just 3/3 here. That's fine, we'll take 3. We've got loads of life to work with. Haven't even had to Ancient Tomb ourselves this game. This flips. So turn after we get to start copying stuff, because this will have Summoning Sickness this turn. If we play this, it has to attack. They can double block it and it will die. That's not really where I want to be, is it? I think I'd rather just deploy another Fable. This Goblin Shaman is going to have to attack because of our Rabblemaster. Force of Will, pitching Emery. Sure, that's fine. But this guy has to attack along with our 1/1. If they want to kill this, they have to take 1 damage. And that leaves us with another Goblin for next turn. And more permanence means more things to throw at our opponent. Yep, they're going for the double block. It seems basically free here. We've got treasure out of it, so it's not nothing. Next turn we can send in the pirates. Take another 3 here. Again, that's perfectly acceptable. We'll still be on 9 life, which is loads. This is going to get shrunk quite soon because we're going to start blowing up their lads. Provided our Broadside Bombardiers resolves. Magus of the Moon. Let's deploy the Bombardiers. Alright, they're scooping up because they obviously see that we're going to be copying, attacking for loads, blowing their stuff up. They're just going to have a miserable time. Sideboarding wise, I would like to play these Fiery Confluences. Magus of the Moon also seems great here, as does Null Rod. As does Emrakul the Aeons Taunt. Leyline is okay. It's better against red painting than it is against blue. It shuts down Emery, but I think we're better off trying to shut them off with these sorts of things anyway. What is going to be the least... I guess we've even got the Unlicensed Hearse if we want it as well. So Squee is probably our weakest card here. So that can go. Fury is okay here. Not outstanding. Maybe we're just better off with these things instead of the Fury. If we're bringing in Null Rod, we probably don't want the Unlicensed Hearses. And we probably don't want the Chrome Moxes. As weird as that is to say. Wouldn't mind having a land to board in when we board Chrome Moxes out, because this doesn't feel like enough mana. I think we do have to keep in a Chrome Mox here. We got, what, 20 lands? And 4 Spirit Guides. That doesn't feel enough. Yeah, this Null Rod is kind of awkward. Alright, I'm going to try like this. We have no mana, apart from this 1 Spirit Guide, which is not going to be good enough for me to keep this hand. That's a hand, isn't it? So one of these things we don't get to keep, which is probably going to be the Trinisphere. Is it the Trinisphere or is it the Den of the Bugbear? I'd like to be able to go turn 1 Chalice or Null Rod. No, yeah, turn 1 Null Rod and Chalice. Turn 2 Broadside Bombardiers. Turn 3, yeah, maybe We're not going to have our land messed with, so I think we can lose the den. Our hand is pretty hateful. We'll lead off on Chalice to 0 because the Null Rod's probably going to be a bit scarier. There is a Mox Opal. There is a Lotus Petal. I'm going to see an artifact to turn on the Mox Opal. It's going to be Painted Servant, perhaps? No. Just a thought cast. Sure. Got anything else to dump out here? Any more zeros? No. Okay. Another Trinisphere. Well, these are things that will get sacrificed to our Broadside Bombardiers. So we'll play out this Chalice first. Right, then we'll play out this Null Rod. Opponent didn't look like they had any counter spells there. They just stick through that one. Alright. Our opponent's permanents are not going to be very useful. They're not going to be able to play a bunch of them, which means they're not going to be able to play a Kappa Cannoneer. And then we can just start doming them with stuff soon. I'd rather get the Broadside Bombardiers in than the Trinisphere. Or Rabblemaster. I like that as well. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I think we're just going to get Rabble-Masters down and just start making inroads into our opponent's life total in a big way. Right. There's a blue mana there. We're going to see Metallic Rebuke. Hydro Blast. Yeah, that's a good one. I think the Broadside Bombardiers is the slightly better one to have resolve. And Rabble-Masters is better to get down early. So I think it makes sense with that sequencing. Expert Prison players, let me know. But that's my logic on that one. Snow-covered island. Okay, so our Blood Moons are not going to be as useful. It'll still shut off as a Saga, which might be one of their best ways to win this game. They foretold a card. That's probably that Raven something that blows stuff up and gives us a 1/1 bird. I can't remember the name of it though. Sokenzan. Let's make a little friend. Alright. We've begun to attack our opponent's life total. I think they might do that Raven spell on our Chalice this turn and dump out a load of zeros, or they can do it on our Null Rod. It depends what their hand's working towards. If they're working towards something like a Kappa Cannoneer, then hitting the Chalice makes more sense. If they're working on some sort of combo-y kill, then the Null Rod makes more sense. Raven form, there it is. Alright, they're just killing our guy. Interesting. I think we are activating our aggressive land here, rather than just putting a Trinisphere into play. Our opponent's got a lot of mana. I think making this game last fewer turns is better than putting a Trinisphere in play when they've got all that mana. Ether Spell Bomb, sure. They can't activate that until they get rid of our Null Rod. The fact they used the Raven form... Right, there's a Thought Monitor, sure. The fact they used the Raven form for the Broadside Bombardiers is kind of interesting. Alright, our opponent's got a line here that's pretty good. The Urza Saga will do some real heavy lifting if they get to start pumping out tokens. Now they do have this Ancient Tomb burning them down though. So if we activate this and we attack, they can block and they take 3 and then they die the next turn. And they can't activate their things. So I think this is the correct play. They have to block the Bugbear. And they take 3 here. So no more Ancient Tomb activations. And the next turn we have 3 lethal attackers. And they'll have maybe 1 blocker. Alright, opponent, you're on 1 life. It's got to be good. Your large blocker will not be sufficient. Alright, that's it. That's the match. We're 3-0. Prisoning people right in the heart. This matchup felt like a pretty good one for where we're positioned right now. These Null Rods, pretty tasty. Let's go to round 4. Alright, into round 4. We have turn 1 Hearst, turn 2 Bombardiers, etc, etc. This seems like a fine one. We are on the draw. Let's hope this Unlicensed Hearst does something, otherwise our hand gets a little bit less good. A mountain. A grindstone. Okay, more painter. Well, we know our sideboard is pretty good for painter style matchups. So let's see if we can do some stuff with that. The Unlicensed Hearst is good here in this matchup, so that's always nice too. There we go. So this makes Welders not very good, which is what we like to see. They run 8 Welders in their deck. 3 mana, fail the Mirror Breaker. Sure, so if they do some looting, that's going to be less good for them. We don't have anything to remove with Hearst end of turn, so it's ours. Den of the Bugbear. That's probably what we're playing this turn. I think we are just jamming this Bombardiers. I don't think we're throwing anything at this guy. Is that a mistake? Interesting. Maybe we're supposed to kill this Shaman. If we kill this Shaman, so they have 1, 2, 3 mana, 4 mana. 5, 6 is what they need to go off, so another Soul Land and they win the game. I I think maybe we are supposed to kill this with our hearse. Just keep their permanents down. We have another hearse, so this might bait them into doing something around welders. Then we can just play the other hearse out and give them a bad time. Because we want them to not play all their combo out all in one turn, so we can at least try and get it with our sorcery speed removal of Shatterskull Smashing. Right, our opponents put a reasonable prize in their graveyard with that Fable in the form of Phyrexian Dragon Engine. This is like a good card advantage engine. They can weld in and out. Goblin Engineer is going to give us something else that we can grab. Probably a Painted Servant, I would imagine. There it is. So I do think we are playing our Unlicensed Hearse here, but are we doing anything else here? So step 1 is play Unlicensed Hearse. And we just immediately get rid of these two. I think step 2 is play Goblin Rabblemaster. And then we throw the token at the Engineer and kill it. Alright, our hand is doing pretty well so far into this matchup. Alright, so they're going to get their Fable, which again we can just kill because we have the Broadside Bombardiers. But our opponent does run things like Fury and Lightning Bolt. So our Broadside Bombardiers may die, but we do have the Shatterskull Smashing. It will cost us our City of Traitors and our Spirit Guide to fire it off though. Unless we draw an untapped red source. They can play it as a Saga, but it won't necessarily be big enough to make much of an impact unless they got some more artifacts here. This could be a Fury turn, which would be very strong. Swords to Plowshares. Alright, they're on the white build. Okay. Another Rabblemaster. How does that change things? That makes the first Rabblemaster bigger, but kind of makes things a bit awkward if you want a Shatterskull Smashing. We do want a Shatterskull Smashing this reflection of Kiki Jiki. We can send the Unlicensed Hearse in as a threat. If we just send this Rabblemaster in, we might as well take out both their token and the reflection. See how this fares. Are we attacking with the Rabblemaster here? They'll probably just trade an Urza Saga token for it. Yeah, I don't think that's worth doing for us. Okay, so now we do get to pick up everything, right? So we go 2, 4, red, red. Shatterskull Smashing. So we go 1 to this and 2 to this. We can actually do 2 to each. And then we have a choice of whether or not we play out this Den of the Bugbear or we hold this open. And we're more likely to want red, red next turn or more colourless mana in total. Like, we're probably just casting Rabblemaster next turn. And we can do that without taking damage if we leave this. So I think we're just going to leave things as they are. We can grow our Unlicensed Hearse and attack with it as well. But we are in the stage of the game where our opponent can draw a Painted Servant and kill us. And there's not a great deal we get to do about that one. Alright, they're floating mana off of the Saga, which doesn't fill me with a great amount of joy. If they've got something better to do than have a creature that will kill our Rabblemaster, then we're probably losing the game this turn. Or they're going to cast a Fury or something. Although these white builds run less Furies. So, okay, a Soul Guide Lantern. Exiling our Hearse, because why not? Sure. It feels like a Fury. It is a Fury. Right, goodbye, Rabblemaster. There's no point animating this Hearse. Another Saga, that's going to be pretty scary for us. Okay, so we get rid of artifacts, just so they don't have anything to weld around, and we just get rid of this Saga. Like, any artifact allows them to start doing welding stuff, so... Okay, so we can trade our Hearse for a Fury if we want to here. That seems pretty reasonable. Or we can wait a turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if it eats 2 more, it'll still trade with a Fury. Interesting. It's getting 4 damage in here. Acceptable. Next turn they make a 3/3. Do I want to trade in with this Fury now or not? That is a tough choice. If we wait 2 turns, then the Unlicensed Hearse can beat the Fury on blocks. I think that's probably where we're at. But I feel our opponent is pretty far ahead. And at any point they can just immediately win the game if they draw a Painted Servant. But if they get their life total low enough, then Unlicensed Hearse becomes a one-shot. And they are running off an Ancient Tomb mana base over there. They're going to cycle this Soul Guide Lantern, yep. We're not going to activate Hearse because we might want to block and activate it. Our opponent's thought for a while. And what are we going to see here? A Fable of the Mirror Breaker. That's pretty scary with a Fury. Now, it's going to be a few turns before that comes online, but that's not something I'm looking forward to dealing with. A Goblin Engineer. So this will just grow our Unlicensed Hearse anyway. So they're probably just going to get something out of their deck they don't want to draw. Or they'll try and get something juicy and bait us into doing it before combat. If that's their plan. So now, trading with this Fury is a good thing to do. Let's see if they agree with me. They do. Alright, so we'll get rid of the 2 artifacts from the graveyard. Just keep nomming away with this unlicensed hearse. We do need something to deal with this engineer, because they can just copy that a bunch, and it's going to be awkward for us. We're getting to an awkward stage in terms of what we're doing with our lands, because we can't reactivate this because the Ancient Tomb is quite a price to pay. But if we play this, then we lose it, the City of Traitors anyway. I don't think we're attacking with the unlicensed hearse because our opponent has an engineer, so they can do some shenanigans with it. So just going to gobble this one up with a Fury. Yep. So now if they attack with their Fury, we can just eat it for free with the hearse. So they're not going to be killing us with combat damage in the near future. But sort of turbo take all the artifacts out of their deck with the engineer and the Fable. So they can take an artifact out of their deck every turn and put it into the graveyard. And they're also looting with the Fable the Mirror Breaker here. I would be surprised if our opponent doesn't win this game. But we do have good draws like Fury, which can sort of change things up a bit. Alright, they're floating with the Saga rather than making a guy, which again fills me with a little bit of worry. A Mox Opal. What are they doing with all this mana? Another Fable. Sure. That's more of the same problem that we were already losing to. So, not ideal. They're going to attack with more than one creature to force through damage. But if they just wait one more turn, then their Fable's online and we're almost certainly dead. Right, they would like a treasure here. So let's animate the hearse. Let's go to blocks. They're doing this because they want a treasure more than they want that 2/2. They have the option of potentially ploughing here off of the Mox Opal. Right. What is this? 3 mana. Bridge of Chasm. Okay, this is Ensnaring Bridge, right? Just with a silly name. Sure. Can we deal with Ensnaring Bridge? Not really. Just get rid of whatever over there. It was already too big to deal with what's happening. So attacking's not an option. Yeah, our opponent has this game. It's just a matter of time. Now if we find some removal for some of their stuff, and maybe we can do some work. If we can get some Chalices down on 2 to stop the Painted Servant coming down, then they won't be able to Pyroblast out our anything, including the Chalice, which will be locking them out. Alright, a Lotus Petal. We're not dead. So now we have an interesting situation here. Right, Fable the Mirror Breaker is a great draw for us. We have a lot of junk in our hand here that we don't really care for. So if we play this Dun in the Bugbear, we lose our City of Traitors. But we can still cast a Fury if we draw one. We can start making more land drops. So I think this is acceptable. Sure, we're making some goblins that can't attack. We need Chalice of the Void on 2. And then our opponent decks first. That's something. They can manually start grindstanding us though. Which I think is actually what I would probably think about doing if I were them. They agreed? They agree. Sure. There's a Chalice that we wanted. Okay. We've got more time on our clock than our opponent, so we're definitely going to be playing this one out. But they can get an engineer and then get an engineer here. A Painted Servant. Okay. They have the mana to grindstone us. Yeah, they're just going for it here. That's fine. That's fine, opponent. You got me. Okay. So, Null Rods. Emrakul the Aeons Torn. Fiery Confluence. Leyline of the Voids are pretty reasonable here as well. Magus of the Moon is potentially interesting. And the Dead and Gone is also interesting. If we're bringing in Null Rods, we're boarding out the hearses. I don't really like Trinisphere in this matchup. So that can go. Squee, Dubious inclusion can go. Blood Moon is interesting. It shuts down their Sagas. But it doesn't do much outside of that. So I think we'll trim the Magus but keep the Blood Moons. Fables, Rabblmasters. If we're boarding in Null Rods, maybe we should be boarding out these Chrome Moxes. That gives us 2 slots to play with, which I guess is just going to be 2 more removal spells. We could board in Caves of Chaos Adventurer to help deal with Stonebridge, but we kind of already have that covered with Fiery Confluence. Sure. We'll give this a go. So, Emrakul on our opening hand is terrible. We can loop it with this Fable, though. So this hand makes turn 1 Chalice for 1, turn 2 Fable, then we loop out this Emrakul. Yeah, I think this is fine. I'm not, like, ecstatic about it, but it's fine. We could just play a turn 1 Fable. That actually seems pretty good. Let's do that. Although, no, I think we just shut off the 1-drops here because they can have things like Lightning Bolt. They can have Welder. If the Welder comes down early, it's really annoying. Let's just say no to their turn 1 play. This also shuts off all their Pyroblasts. So we shut off their Graveyard. We shut off their Pyroblasts. Well, obviously, they'd have to deal with the Leyline, but because they're white builds these days, they can deal with Leyline. Things like Wear Tear. Although they have to deal with the Chalice as well. Interesting. Arid Mesa, sure. Basic Mountain. Alright, so we can loot away this Emrakul next turn. That'd be quite nice. Our opponent's not going to have any instant speed graveyard hate against us. And they can't play Soulguide Lantern under the Chalice to have that available to them. So we should be able to put this Emrakul into our deck. But our opponent will know we have the Emrakul, which does shrink its impact in the matchup. And lets our opponent play a different way. And there is a Painter's Servant. Yes, I would like to use his ability. And we're getting rid of Emrakul and a Simian Spirit Guide here. And we've drawn some blanks, I would say. It's safe to say that those are blanks. I think getting the treasure here is worth attacking because we're going to play the Simian Spirit Guide out anyway. And we're giving our opponent a little test there. Alright, let's cast this. Let's cost us damage here. I don't think we're going to burn a treasure on this. We just take 2 damage. Our opponent's probably going to pivot into a more damage-based game, knowing that we have the Emrakul. I think I would rather be in our opponent's shoes here. We definitely have some big haymakers. It doesn't really feel like we're getting there yet. Like Urza Saga can eventually get them a grindstone underneath the Chalice. Like their whole deck is just full of different sort of engines and ways of puzzling through games, whereas ours is a little bit more linear in terms of what it wants to achieve. It's going to be a Fury. Goblin Engineer. Let's see what they rip out their deck. What are they not in the market for right now? Because this goes straight into the void. Lotus Petals. Okay, they don't want to draw Lotus Petals. And don't want to draw Great Furnace. Alright. Let's see if they do the attack on us or not. They're not. So now our Fable is going to become a guy. Well, that's pretty exciting. So if we play this Broadside Bombardiers, they can double block with these Engineers. If we wait till next turn, we play the Broadside Bombardiers and copy it. That seems better than just hanging it out there, doesn't it, to me? They can double block this Shaman token if they want to. If we attack like this, we are attacking with both. I think it makes sense here. So they can double block and kill, but we will kill one of their Engineers. Sure. This is fine. The less things we have to shoot down with our Bombardiers, the better, I think. We've already got 2 extra permanents out of that Shaman token. We've got plenty of mana here. I guess we could try and just keep it around and try and cast an Emrakul at some point, which would be fun, but I don't think that's what this matchup is ever going to be about. This is going to be a Fury. Yep, that's a pretty good one. This is another reason why Sandbagging and Bombardiers is good. So they're going to blow up both these guys, and then they're going to attack us for 2, and then we're going to Broadside Bombardiers and kill this Fury. But we have to decide what we're killing it with, because it has to be the Leyline, I think, which is not really ideal. We can deploy another Leyline. Simian Spirit Guide. Okay, that's probably better. So if we go cast this 1, 2, 3, play this guy, and then cast this with a treasure, and go attacks. So this will deal 5 damage to the Fury, and then next turn we can throw a treasure at the Goblin Engineer, and they can't block. And then we can maybe start throwing our other permanents. Oh no, another Fury. Yeah, another Fury. Yikes. Okay, so we're in trouble now. We can draw a Fury of our own. That's pretty good. But we don't have a lot of time. We have to draw it now. So this is 6, 7, 8. That's exactly lethal and we die here. GG's opponents. Yeah, that matchup felt tougher than the blue painter. Like, I think we definitely have hands that can, like, boss our opponent around in this matchup. But we had, like, a bunch of their stuff covered, but their hand just wasn't about that, which is the strength of the red painted decks, because they can kind of pivot quite nicely into, like, aggressive things. Like, this hand, the Fury, the Engineers were bad, and the Painted Servant wasn't great either. But it didn't need to be, because we spent so many resources on stopping what they were doing that their Furies were enough. Alright, Trophy Dream is over. Let's go to the final round and see if we can get that 4-1. Alright, turn 1, Chalice, turn 2 threat. We can keep this. Opponent's already down to 5. Down to 4. Does this make me want to Chalice for 0? What decks go down to 4 cards? Oopsal Spells, Reanimator, sort of jam. If we put this on 1, they can't Dark Ritual. But maybe we'll get some information on their first turn about where we want to put this Chalice. And Urza's Saga. Mulligan to 4, Urza's Saga. That is an odd one, isn't it? Are we Chalicing for 0? I think we're playing out this Mox. So if we Chalice for 0 against Urza's Saga, that's usually pretty good. If they had a 1-drop they could cast off the Saga, I'd probably cast it then. I think we go Chalice for 0 and play Rabblemaster. Alright, Chalice for 0 was the right number, as it turns out. Okay, Null Rods, Magus of the Moon, Fiery Confluence. These are the things that I think I definitely want. Which means we probably don't want Hearses, we probably don't want Chrome Moxes. That's pretty clean. Do we want anything else in here? Hard to say. So Scoop to Chalice on 0. So that makes you think we're looking at more like Saga Storm or Paradoxical Outcome style decks, or maybe even 8-cast. So Leyline is good against some of those, but not good against all of them. I think we're just going to ball in like this. Maybe they're Painter, but we get to be on the play for game 3 with full information about what our opponent's deck is, if that's the case. No, I don't think we can keep this one. Alright, we can keep this one. Turn 1 Magus, or turn 1... Well, we can do turn 1 Chalice for 0 and Magus. Or Blood Moon, depending on which we think is more likely to resolve. One of these goes back. Probably the Spirit Guide. Oh, we have 3 mana. Our deck curves out at 3 in the main deck. Well, we have Fury, but... Right, opponent's got to 5. There's a Saga deck that's gone to 4 and 5. Interesting. Crystal Vein. Okay, so this is probably like the colourless Saga deck. That's my... Wait, did we put back the Spirit Guide, didn't we? That was foolish. That's not the one I wanted to put back, was it? Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, so I think we want Chalice for 0 again. Now, we were supposed to throw back something else there, one of the moons, and then deploy the turn 1 thing. That was just a bit of a punt from me there. My brain had switched into thinking that we were paying mana for our Chalice. Alright, Grim Monolith. Alright, already being punished for our misplay. Another Grim Monolith, sure. A Worm Coil Engine. Okay. Yeah, pretty harshly punished there. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I think that's where we have to be right now. So this is the colourless one, I believe. With like Mystic Forge and stuff like that. Sphere of Resistance, sure. Interesting. Wasn't expecting to see that. Sure, we'll take some damage off this guy. Let's loot away some Blood Moons, I think, here. Found another Blood Moon. We're not going to be able to race this until we kill it. How do we kill it? We can Bombardiers it, so we need to find something that's CMC 5 to see this. So probably looking at chump blocking it a bit. If we play out this Rabblemaster, we have to tap our Ancient Tomb, which puts us down to 8. Which I guess is the same, but it means we're probably not tapping our Ancient Tombs again. Actually, no, it's still probably fine, right? It's going to be harder to block if we have this. We can block with our Magus. That's probably what we have to do next turn, is play the Magus and block. Now, the Rabblemaster can scale up a little bit here, but we're going to need to keep finding chump blocks. Basically, we're punished because we misplayed with our opening hand, keeping it. Just didn't concentrate fully, and here we are. They're unlikely to play anything underneath this Sphere of Resistance anyway. Oh, maybe they will. It doesn't really matter what they're playing here. The thing we have to beat is what's in play right now. They've got Saga coming down. Wait, we don't even get to cast the Magus now, do we? Because of our Ancient Tomb. This flips and can block. So that's probably what's going to be what happens here, which is kind of annoying. Do we want to block with this? Actually, if we don't block with this, we can just copy it every turn until we find a route out of this game. We don't get to make any of the spells in our hand. So we can chump block with our Rabblemaster, and then we can start copying our guy every turn. But this Urza Saga will... Yep, it's going to be making them some tokens. So that's going to be a fun one to deal with, isn't it? But if we can find a Fury, we can probably win this game. A Den of the Bugbear. This will come into play tapped. So how big will this be? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's too big, unfortunately. So here we are. We're going to see a little bit more of our opponent's deck. Maybe this isn't a deck where we want to play stuff for 0. Chalice for 0 on. Maybe we don't even want Chalice in this matchup. I don't know. Interested in dragging this game out a little bit so we can see some more of the action in our opponent's deck. Like if they're a Sphere of Resistance deck, then they're a different beast. Given this trample is going to be pretty problematic for us. Yeah, I think we're done here actually. We can't even drag it out if they've got Shadow Spear. Alright, so we punted that game and punished for it pretty hard. Okay, it feels like they are a sort of colourless combo with the Wormcoil pivot, which has been becoming increasingly common. I think we probably still want the Chalices, but it is interesting. Alright, we'll submit. I turn 1 Trinisphere into some other stuff. I don't think this does it for us. I think we can do better. This is bad. We're going to mulligan. Right, it's our turn to go to Oblivion. Yikes. Turn 1 Chalice into Bombardiers. I guess we keep this now because that's all we have as an option, really. Probably the Fury that goes here. Not feeling great about this one. Chalice for 0. Basically, I was looking for a Blood Moon hand, really. We got 6 Blood Moons, so I was kind of hoping that we'd hit one. But we're kind of all in on this not so great guy. And our opponent's got 7 cards this time, so... I think our opponent might just be like the colourless combo and they just pivot into more of a stompy thing in post-board. But punting that second game is going to cost us quite big. Like, they still get the Wormcoil down, right? They still play a Grim Monolith and they play a Grim Monolith and then they get us. So we did punt, but it was... Okay, so maybe they are more towards the stompy side than I thought. And this Chalice is kind of useless. Very funny deck. We'll keep this Chalice saved up in case they play anything we can kill with it. There's a Saga. Right, we're unlikely to be able to form much of a response to this Saga. Nettle Cyst. Yep, our opponent is just on something that I was not really sure of, to be honest. Okay, that's a 3/3 Nettle Cyst. Because this counts enchantments. Yeah, and counts here as a Saga. Fable Mirror Breaker that we can't cast. We can still attack here because our guy has Menace. Saga tokens are going to be 3/3s. So I think we will start doming our opponent over there. Next turn we can Trinisphere them. And throw the Trinisphere. And that's 5, 6, 7 damage. If they activate this Ancient Tomb and attack, we might be able to kill them. Alright. This is looking good for us so far. Another Urza Saga, sure. We need him to attack with this Nettle Cyst. Right, I did have a bunch of zeros. Okay. Bunch of zeros and Thorn of Amethyst. Right, they're making a guy. If they attack here, they lose. They decided not to attack. Okay. So next turn, they go and get themselves the Shadow Spear and equip, and then we lose. Can they Shadow Spear equip without... I'm trying to work out. Can they Shadow Spear equip without using Ancient Tomb? They just tap those 2 lands. Yeah, so they can do that. So our City of Traitors here will not save us. They're going to gain a boatload of life and we're going to die. Interesting. It's not interesting. We're just going to lose because of our misplay in the previous game. Which, you know, we made a significant misplay. We deserve to lose. We can kill this Construct token and force through 2 damage. Because this has Menace. And then next turn, if we can... Like, they're going to get Shadow Spear and we're going to lose, is what's going to happen. It shouldn't be a difficult line for our opponent to navigate. Although if they have to attack here, if we can deploy one of the things in our hand, if we can deploy the Bombardiers, because that will get through the Thorn of Amethyst, then we can attack for 2 and 5, which is 7. And if they activate this, okay. So they have to activate the Ancient Tomb here if they want to equip the Shadow Spear. So that's down 2 life to 2, and then up 8 life to 10, which is more than we can deal. So I think we are just dead. But they attack here, we get to attack back. Yeah, I really just didn't have the read on what our opponent was playing either. And obviously our hand is hot garbage, so we are pretty much boned from the start. Maybe we're supposed to get 4, but that doesn't feel great. Like, we deserve to lose because we made a misplay. But it's still annoying. Fiery Confluence. Now, if we had the mana, this would be great. We do not have the mana. We attack here, they kill us on the backswing. Yeah, we lose to a misplay there, but you live and learn, I suppose. Yeah, it was just thinking too quickly, and it went wrong for us. So we end up with 3-2, but it should have been a 4-1 for the deck, just not for the player. Let's talk about this list. So a recurring problem that I had with this deck was the mana base. It didn't feel like we had enough lands. Now, I know we were boarding out Chrome Moxes, but that's because we've got these Null Rods. And if we're boarding in Null Rods, I don't really want to be sat around with a Chrome Mox where we pitch 2 cards to it and then it doesn't do anything. If we saw more of our opponent's deck, I might have been more inclined to cut the Null Rod entirely because they are more of a stompy list than a combo list. So they're not going to have as many activated abilities. So maybe that would be a little bit different. And we'd have had more land. But having these Null Rods in the sideboard definitely incentivizes you to board out Chrome Mox. And our deck can struggle to operate with mana sometimes, which is awkward. But other than that, I felt like it was a fine deck. It just kind of does all the stompy stuff. Not having Caves of Chaos Adventure is interesting because Caves of Chaos Adventurer is a thing that just wins on its own. So if you have that in the main deck, you cast it. In a lot of matchups, that wins you the game. And that was kind of like the go-to big thing that they were doing in Prison decks for a while as their top end. And this deck has kind of embraced the 3-drop slots. And that's kind of all it's really up to for the most part. You know, you've also got these 3-drops as well. So our deck is just all 3-drops all the time. Also, hands where you have to start with the City of Traitors are grim. But there we go. Trinisphere is an interesting one here. Like, sometimes it is going to be great and sometimes it's not going to be great. But I think just having it as a thing on the play here it makes sense. If you win die rolls, Trinisphere on turn 1 is going to really ruin people's day. Our deck is designed to make a 3-drop on turn 1. So we have a bunch of them, whether it's the Rabblemaster for aggro, the Fable just to improve our hand and accelerate out nicely, or Blood Moons or Trinispheres, even Bombardiers. We've got a decent chunk of stuff to do. The Bombardiers here felt a lot worse than they do in the Goblin decks because you have less superfluous stuff to throw. Because we spend all of our resources making these like prison pieces and then sacrificing them. You know, you're usually, you know, sacrificing them is okay depending on what you're doing. Like if it's for reach to win the game, brilliant. If you're killing a problem thing, you're kind of trading a prison piece for a guy. But if you've got multiple of that prison piece, then it's fine. So it does make your redundant extra pieces good. You know, if you're drawing extra chalices in the mid game that you don't need, you know, they're shocks. You know, if you're drawing extra blood moons, they're lava axes. That's pretty good. We just didn't get to leverage it that much. But I think if you're not drawing superfluous copies, then it's less good because we don't have that much trash that we're trying to throw away. Like we can throw away tokens for 2 damage. We never really got to do that too much because we quite often ended up with just our Bombardiers as our last thing. But it did give us lines where we could try and win the game a few times. We didn't get there sometimes, but that's it. I do think Bombardiers is still a great card. The fact that it's better in the Goblin decks doesn't mean it's bad here. It just means that it's not like super duper gob tier. It's just a very good legacy card, if you know what I mean. Whereas in the Goblin deck, it feels like nigh on unbeatable sometimes. And there's definitely situations we could set up here. But if you've got a Rabblemaster and a Bombardiers, you're probably winning anyway. So it's not necessarily helping you get back in. Whereas in Goblins, you can then use it. So if you've just got a bunch of 1/1s that aren't doing anything, all of a sudden, they're like lava axes or whatever, like with Goblin Matrons. Whereas here, if you've got things making 1/1s, those things are good anyway. But I digress. Card is good. Yeah, I felt like the mana was the only thing that let me down a little bit, and my own sloppy play in that one thing where I kept the wrong card. So there's a lesson to you to pay more attention. This isn't particularly my style of deck necessarily, but I can see why people play it. You know, it's quite fun. You can bash out leagues relatively quickly. Your decision-making points are in a different stage of the game to a lot of other decks because you're very reliant on your opening hand, more so than a lot of other decks. Now, obviously, I play things like Turbo Depths a lot, which is a very similar deal. But that one is a bit different because you're like, does this hand win the game? Whereas this one is like, is this hand keepable and playable? You know, does it do enough to suppress the opponent and endanger the opponent's life total? Because you have to do both with this deck is the thing. You can't just play prison pieces because your opponent will eventually win anyway. And if you play aggro, that's also fine. Like, I guess if you just have an aggro start, like a turn one Rabblemaster is fine. But ideally you want a prison piece and an attack piece. Alright, I don't really have much more to say about this. You know, this is a known deck in the format. It's around a lot. I want more people to play it because it's got a very bad matchup against Turbo Depths. So, so that's a bit selfish of me. But I think this deck is, you know, it's been around for a long time and I don't see it ever going away. It does really powerful stuff. It's like the classic Ancient Tomb City of Traitors type deck that's just trying to power out some impressive things. It also doesn't lose its City of Traitors because of all the blood moons you're playing. So there's a lot to like about it. I enjoy ruining people's day. And that's what this deck does quite well. And it's not just a complete, like, switch your brain off deck. You know, you do have to be very into what you're doing in the matchups and the hands you're keeping. And we did make a little slip up here and there here. But like I said, it's not my deck. I think the learning curve of this deck is relatively steep, but sort of plateaus earlier than some other decks. Because, you know, you need to learn your matchups. You need to learn what you're keeping. And things like that. But then once you get there, there's not as much in-game decisionings outside of Fable the Mirrorbreaker, which is nice. Fable the Mirrorbreaker adds an extra layer to this deck, so there's more play to it, which I think is why more people are on it these days, as well as that card just being good and the deck being good. So yeah, this is definitely a deck that you can learn relatively quickly for Legacy standards. Although with City of Traitors, it's not always the cheapest deck to play in paper, but then again, it's Legacy, so by those standards, it's not the most expensive either, really. It's not got a bunch of jewels. All right, yeah, I think I've rambled about this one long enough. Hope you enjoyed today's midweek meta deck. Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I'm trying to hit 2,500 subs before April, which is when my birthday is. And if we do that, then I'm going to do some giveaways of loads of extra donation decks on my Patreon. So help me achieve that. And thank you for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbo Depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbo Depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.